I thought we were fine, and then he asked for a divorce, so I gave his lawyer a surprise. I don't love you anymore. We should end this. Yeah, those words, dropped on a windy October afternoon like they meant nothing, rattled around in my head for weeks. Have you ever had your heart ripped out and stomped on at the same time? Because I'm not sure what stings worse, being flat out betrayed, or hearing the person you gave your whole damn heart to look you dead in the eye and say you're just not worth it anymore. I got both, in one sitting. But this isn't some sob story. This is how I grabbed my life back with both hands. But before I get to the fallout, and trust me, it falls, you need to know who I am, how I got here. Why didn't I see it coming? My name's Isabel Cross. I'm 27, a commercial contracts attorney in Chicago, Illinois. Not a celebrity or anything, but in the legal world, my name rings bells. That's why I'm keeping the rest of the details private. Courtrooms, conventions, law firm circles, they talk. And I've had enough of my life turned into gossip fuel. Now for the second star of this train wreck, my ex-husband, Dustin Reed, 41. The smug CEO of a luxury restaurant group that stretches coast to coast, from NYC to LA. Dustin was slick, polished, and walked into every room like he owned it. That's what pulled me in when we met at some corporate mixer. I thought I had found the one, a man who knew the grind, the hustle, and wouldn't flinch when life got crazy. But Dustin? He didn't just want success. He craved more. More attention. More money. More women, especially the shiny ones, who fit his idea of trophy-worthy. Apparently, I stopped qualifying somewhere along the way. We tied the knot over a decade ago, when our careers were both catching fire. I thought that meant we'd grow together. I was wrong. Marriage with Dustin was nothing like the rom-coms I used to binge on weekends. After a while, the connection started slipping. Shorter talks, colder nights, fewer dinners together. His so-called urgent meetings and cross-country trips multiplied. And I, like an idiot, kept telling myself this was just a rough patch. Work stress, I told myself. He's overwhelmed. He'll come back to me. But deep down, I already knew. I knew something was seriously off. Not just physically, but emotionally. He'd already packed up and left. I just hadn't caught up yet. I kept lying to myself, thinking it was just one of those slumps couples go through. You know the kind. Too much work, not enough time. I figured Dustin was drowning in stress, and if I just held on a little longer, we'd get back to us. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. He wasn't just checked out physically, emotionally. He'd ghosted me long ago. When I finally decided to dig into the truth, I found exactly what I'd been afraid of. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. What came next? Let's just say he had no idea who he was messing with. Dustin always played it smart. He was calculated, smooth, and obsessed with keeping up appearances, especially around me. But the thing is, no matter how sharp someone thinks they are, the little things always give them away eventually. And the cracks started showing, over a year before it all blew up. At first it was harmless-sounding stuff. I'll be home by 8, then showing up at midnight. Investor dinner ran late, or had to swing by a location in LA. His business trips got longer, then more frequent. I'll hit New York, maybe drop by Dallas, then circle back by Thursday. He'd say like it was no big deal. I was used to his grind, but something in his voice, in the way he looked away, while talking, it set off alarms. Subtle, but constant. Then there were the upgrades. New designer suits. Fancy cologne I'd never seen before. He even hit the gym again. When I joked, "What? You're auditioning for GQ now?" he just laughed it off. "Come on, Isabel, I'm just trying to look sharp for the clients." Yeah, okay. I should have seen it right then. But whether it was love or straight-up delusion, I didn't let myself believe it. Not until that Saturday. He claimed he had to fly to a last-minute conference in Chicago. The second the door shut behind him, I stood up and said to myself, "No more guessing. It's time to know." So I went into his home office. Dustin always covered his tracks, but he wasn't perfect. In a locked drawer, I found an old laptop he hadn't touched in years. Looked harmless until I booted it up and found a second Facebook account, one I never knew existed. My stomach flipped. First thing I saw? A photo of Dustin with another woman. Caption, "Every day's brighter with my beautiful girl." I nearly threw up. She looked like she'd stepped out of some perfume commercial. Sunday-kissed blonde hair, that magazine cover glow, a smile engineered in a lab. Picture after picture, flirty comments, sappy love notes, messages that made it crystal clear he was having an affair. I just sat there, frozen, hands shaking, scrolling through lie after lie, trip after trip he'd told me were for business. When he was wrapped up with her, everything about our marriage suddenly felt fake, like I'd been living in a set piece, while he starred in some twisted double life. That night, I didn't sleep. Rage and heartbreak churned like acid in my gut. And the worst part, I'd built a career spotting liars for a living, yet somehow I'd missed the one sleeping next to me. But the next morning, I woke up with a new mission. I was done playing the fool. If Dustin wanted to throw our life away, fine. He'd just better be ready to watch it burn on the way down. Nobody betrays me and walks away clean. Dustin strolled into the house Monday morning, like he'd just wrapped up a normal business trip, not like he'd blown up our whole marriage. Tie loosened, jacket slung over his shoulder, he glanced around and asked, casual as hell, "You make coffee?" His tone was light, fake friendly, but all I saw was the mask. I could feel my fists clenching at my sides, but I kept my face calm. I wasn't going to let him see me break. "We need to talk," I said, ice in my voice as my eyes locked onto his. He froze for half a second, surprised, but then slid straight into his usual smug irritation. "What's with the attitude?" "I just walked in the door." I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone, opened the photo, the one with him and his little side piece, and held it up in front of him. "You still gonna act like I don't know?" My voice was tight, shaking, but not from fear, from fury. Dustin stared at the screen, quiet at first, then gave this dry, heartless laugh. "So you've been snooping around, huh?" That was it? That's what he had to say? "This is your explanation?" I asked, eyes wide in disbelief. "You cheat on me and brush it off like I'm being dramatic?" He gave a half shrug, like I was boring him. "Look, Isabel, you're being way too sensitive. It's not even serious with her. Maybe you should focus more on your work than on trying to control everything I do." Control? Was this guy for real? "All those nights," I snapped. "All those fake trips, all the lies, you were with her, and now you want to flip it back on me?" He sighed, full of fake exhaustion. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. We're different now. You're always buried in legal briefs and conference calls. And, let's be honest, you're not as hot as you used to be." I couldn't breathe. It felt like the room dropped 10 degrees. "What did you just say?" I asked, stunned. You heard me, he said, cold and detached. I want someone who actually fits my life. Someone put together, attractive, who knows how to keep herself up, and who doesn't treat every argument like a courtroom battle. My whole body shook. Still, I kept my voice as even as I could. So cheating was your big solution? That's your answer when things get hard? He laughed again, low and cruel. Honestly? Yeah? And just so we're clear, I've already filed. I've got a lawyer. This whole thing? It's done. You should start packing. I stared at him, my chest hollow. Over a decade together. And this is how it ended? You're a coward, Dustin, I whispered. But don't think for 1 second you're walking away from this clean. You will pay for what you've done. Consequences? Ooh. Dustin laughed, loud and smug like he was delivering a punchline. You? Ooh. Isabel, you don't stand a chance against me. You'll just end up making a fool of yourself. I've already got everything lined up. I didn't say a word. Not one. But inside, woo, I was already planning his downfall. This wasn't the end. This was my origin story. The start of the fight to take back everything he tried to strip from me. Dustin had no idea who he'd just screwed over, but he was about to find out. I walked into my home office, still shaking with rage, but my mind was razor sharp. He thought he had the upper hand because he blindsided me. He forgot one very important fact. I don't fold. I don't cover. I'm a damn lawyer. And the last person you want to screw with, if you're trying to cheat your way out of consequences. As I flipped through some old files, something hit me like lightning. The prenup. Back when we were young and climbing the ladder, we both agreed to sign a prenuptial agreement, just in case. I'd insisted on it, and thank God I did. Because right there, in Clause 8, in black and white legal language, it said, if either party is caught committing adultery, the other is entitled to half of the business assets. I tore through my filing cabinet until I found the original copy. And when I saw that sentence staring back at me, asset division in the event of infidelity, I smiled. Actually smiled. Dustin had been so damn cocky, so sure I'd stay quiet, that I'd just walk away empty-handed. He must have thought I'd forgotten about the contract, the one I wrote, during a legal consult. That I ran. The arrogance, the audacity. From that moment on, I went into full war mode. I spent the next few days gathering everything. Screenshots of messages from his burner Facebook account, photos of him playing happy couple with his mistress, hotel reservations, flight itineraries for work trips that lined up perfectly with her Instagram posts. I had it all, and the more I printed, the calmer I felt. There was no walking away from this. He was going to eat every lie he ever told me, piece by piece. When the stack was thick and ironclad, I set a meeting with his attorney, Grant Sullivan, a high-profile family lawyer with a clean reputation and a client list full of rich idiots. We met at a Kia cafe downtown. He smiled like this was going to be some smooth little sit-down. Miss Cross, he greeted. Dustin told me this was just an informal conversation. Said you both want to resolve this amicably. I let out a soft chuckle. My eyes didn't flinch. Oh, he didn't tell you the real reason I asked to meet. I reached into my bag, pulled out a heavy folder, and slid it across the table. You might want to read these before you draft anything for your client. He opened it, and his face went from professional to pale in about 10 seconds flat. Photos, receipts, screenshots, the full, unfiltered timeline of Dustin's betrayal. Oh my God, he whispered, visibly rattled. That's not all, I said, calm as steel. Your client violated our prenuptial agreement, which means I am legally entitled to half of his business holdings. I'm not backing down, Mr. Sullivan. So if I were you, I'd really think about whether you want to keep representing a man who lied to your face." Grant was quiet for a long beat, then let out a deep sigh. He never mentioned the prenup. Said you were just being vindictive. I gave him a flat smile. Well, now you know who's actually playing dirty. The meeting ended with Grant saying he'd need to speak with Dustin. Translation? Woo. He's out. And Dustin? Woo. He'd just walked straight into a war he couldn't win. I knew exactly what that meant. Grant was out. No smart attorney wants to stick their neck out for a lying client, especially when they're up against someone like me. Dustin had backed himself into a legal corner, and he didn't even see it coming. And that was just the warm-up. Over the next few days, things unraveled exactly like I knew they would. Grant officially dropped Dustin's case, said he wouldn't represent him anymore, not after seeing the mountain of receipts and the prenup that Dustin had clearly violated. And Dustin? Oh, he lost it. I started getting texts, missed calls, voicemails. He went into full panic mode. I didn't answer a single one. Just watched the desperation build. Let's see who's the real joke now, I thought, torn between being furious and feeling free. At first, he kept up the act, bragging to mutual contacts that he was bringing in some big-shot lawyer who'd wipe the floor with me. But the legal world? It's smaller than people think. And my reputation? Rock solid. Word spread fast. No one wanted to touch him. Turns out, attorneys don't like clients who lie to them or who leave a paper trail of cheating and arrogance. Dustin became radioactive. Then one Saturday morning, as I was prepping for a Zoom meeting with a client, the doorbell rang, over and over. I frowned, wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there he was. But this wasn't the man I used to know, the man who wore tailored suits and smug smiles. No, this was someone else entirely, thinner, gaunt, hair a mess, eyes full of panic. "We need to talk, Isabel," he said, voice unsteady. I folded my arms, icy calm. "I thought we agreed to talk through lawyers." "Oh, right. Couldn't find one?" He looked down, shame all over his face. "Isabel, this isn't what you think. I know I messed up. I ended things. With her. Can we please talk, just as adults?" I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean your mistress? Did she bounce when she realized your net worth wasn't what she signed up for?" He flinched. "She doesn't matter. What matters is us. We had something good. I was an idiot, I know that, but we can fix it." That actually made me laugh. A bitter, hollow laugh. "Dustin, you think I'm stupid enough to forget everything you did? That some half-baked apology is all it takes? Spare me." He tried to stay composed, but his voice cracked. "I'm losing everything. If this goes to court, I'm finished. Just tell me what you want. Anything. Just, please, don't take half the company." I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "You remember who wrote that prenup clause?" You did. You're not being punished, Dustin. You're just facing the consequences." He stood there, pale as a ghost, still pleading, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door, "and don't ever come back." I slammed the door behind him, and for a long moment, I just stood there, breathing it all in. The silence. The finality. He thought he could own me forever. That I'd keep bending, keep breaking. But he finally learned the truth. I'm the only one who decides how my story ends. The divorce moved faster than I imagined. The prenup and the hard evidence? Woo, unbeatable. Dustin had no cards left to play. In the end, he folded, signed the agreement, handed over half his empire. Just like that. We didn't even need to step foot inside a courtroom. It was a clean win. But weirdly, woo, it didn't feel like victory. Not in the triumphant, champagne-popping way I'd once imagined. It just felt finished. Like I'd sealed the last page of a book I never wanted to read again. Word about the divorce spread like wildfire across the business circles. People were stunned. Dustin, the golden boy with the coast-to-coast restaurant chain, had just lost nearly half his assets to me. His empire? Woo, cracking at the seams. Without enough cash flow to support his fancy cars, private tastings, and designer life, he had to let go of the mansion in the Denver suburbs and downgrade to a mid-range rental apartment in some forgettable neighborhood. And that woman, the one he used to call his real love, woo, gone, disappeared the moment she realized the money had dried up. The same cold indifference he once showed me was now mirrored back at him. Karma's got a mean backhand. While Dustin tried to figure out how to live without his golden pedestal, I focused on rebuilding mine. The business shares I walked away with became a steady stream of income. I didn't need to run the day-to-day, hired a solid management team for that. I poured my time into my legal work. And, for once, into myself. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I got a call from Nancy, my best friend, the one who'd quietly stood by during the chaos. "You and I need a break," she said. "This weekend. Somewhere beautiful. You've earned it." And damn, she was right. I'd been so stuck in survival mode. I forgot what joy even looked like. That weekend, we packed up and headed to the mountains in Aspen. Rented a cozy villa, hiked through forest trails, let the wind blow our worries away. At one point, standing under a painted sky of orange and gold, I turned to her and smiled. I forgot what it felt like to just breathe. Nancy smiled back. "And you deserve to. No one gets to take that from you again." Her words stuck with me. When I got home, I made a choice, not to prove anything, not out of spite, but because I wanted it. I bought a new house. My house, in a quiet neighborhood with a huge garden. I handpicked every piece of furniture, every rug, every frame on the wall. For the first time in years, I was creating a space that felt like me. No compromise. No pretending. Life finally began to stabilize. I took on bigger legal cases, gained even more trust from my clients, and at the firm, people saw me differently. Not just as the sharp attorney, but as the woman who didn't break when life tried to bury her. Then, one quiet afternoon in my office, an email popped up. "Can we talk?" It was from Dustin. I opened it, scanned the paragraphs filled with apologies, regret, guilt, all of it dripping in too late energy. He wanted to meet, said he hoped we could stay friends. I just leaned back in my chair, let out the softest, coldest laugh, and shook my head. Friends? After everything? Yeah, no. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't need to see him suffer, and I sure as hell wasn't clinging to old bitterness. I just didn't need his apology anymore. My life had turned the page, and Dustin? He wasn't in this chapter. So I hit delete, I closed my laptop and stepped out into the afternoon sun, letting it warm my skin like a promise. I felt light, free. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for closure. I was the closure. This journey didn't come easy. It cost me sleep, tears, and pieces of myself I'll probably never get back. But I came out of it with something bigger than revenge: clarity. It started with just a few weeks. That's what he said when he left, with a small bag and a tired smile, promising he'd be back as soon as his mom was stable. And at first, I believed him. I needed to believe him. Week 1, he still called. Every night. The conversations were short, awkward, like he was speaking through a wall. But at least he called. Week 2, the calls became texts. Crazy busy. Mom's worse. Can't talk today, sorry. By week 3, it felt like he'd fallen off the map. Brandon had never been this distant. He stopped asking about Ellie's school projects. Stopped sending those silly midday selfies he used to love. Stopped being him. And every afternoon after school, Ellie would look up at me with those wide, hopeful eyes and ask, "When is Daddy coming home, Mom?" I'd force a smile and lie through my teeth. "Soon, sweetie. He's just helping Grandma." But truthfully, I wasn't sure anymore. I tried to keep it together, juggling night shifts at the hospital, making sure Ellie was okay, telling myself Brandon would come back to us, that the man I trusted with everything wouldn't just disappear. But every night, when Ellie finally drifted off, I'd sit alone in the dark, staring at a silent phone, just waiting, wondering. The silence wasn't just in the room, it was inside me, creeping into my bones like a cold front, the kind that shows up without warning, makes the whole world feel brittle. And slowly, I started to wonder, what if it wasn't just about his mom? By the 4th week, the questions had turned into something worse: evidence. Ellie started waking up at night, tiptoeing into my room, her little voice trembling. "Mom, did Daddy forget us?" I'd pull her close, brush her hair back, and whisper, "No, honey, he's just really busy helping Grandma." But I was lying to her, and to myself. The signs were there. All those tiny changes I once brushed off were now screaming at me. Brandon used to be the kind of dad who always called to say goodnight, even on business trips, even from a noisy airport. Now, Ellie was falling asleep to old voice recordings, messages I saved months ago, because she liked hearing his voice. That Friday, after a long shift, as I changed out of my scrubs in the locker room, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding all week. Something in me was cracking, and I knew something wasn't right. I let out a sigh, without even realizing it. Across the locker room, Gwen, one of my oldest friends, and a nurse I'd worked beside for years, glanced over at me through the mirror. "Still stuck on Brandon?" she asked, straight to the point, like always. I nodded slowly. "He's just gone. Like, completely. Ellie cries herself to sleep some nights because he won't even call. And me?" He paused, voice low. "I don't even know what I'm holding on to anymore." Gwen walked over and gently squeezed my shoulder. "Look, if this was just about his mom, there are 100 ways he could still be present. A man doesn't have to vanish from his own family, just to prove he's a good son." I didn't say anything, but I felt it, that quiet, heavy truth sinking in. Then Gwen hit me with the real question. "Have you thought about just going there?" No text, no warning, just show up. The thought hit me like a jolt. It clenched something deep in my chest, but underneath that tightness, I felt something else, clarity, for the first time in weeks. That night, while Ellie was sprawled out on the living room floor, colouring, I opened my laptop and searched for Sylvia's address. She lived in Asheville, a little under 4 hours from Raleigh. I jotted it down, looked over at Ellie, who glanced up, her eyes lighting up like sunshine through clouds. "Mom? Are we going somewhere this weekend?" I smiled softly. "Yeah, baby. We're going to see Daddy. But it's a surprise, okay? Don't tell him." Ellie squealed, jumped up, and darted off to grab one of her new drawings. "I'm gonna give this to Daddy so he won't forget us." That hit hard. The next morning, I put in for the weekend off. Then I stopped by a little watch shop near the hospital. Bought the exact model Brandon had once said he wanted, but never got around to buying. Had it gift wrapped. After that, I picked up a tin of cinnamon cookies and a box of jasmine tea, Sylvia's favourites. On the outside, it looked like I was preparing for a normal family visit, but deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a visit. This was recon. Sunday morning, right at 8 a.m, we hit the road. Ellie sat in the back, teddy bear in her arms, humming along to the radio. I drove through long empty stretches of highway, pine trees turning gold on both sides, leaves falling like quiet warnings. About 30 minutes outside Asheville, my stomach started to twist. Not out of fear, but because I knew this was it. The truth was waiting on the other side of that front door. I let out a tired sigh before I even realized it. Across the break room, Gwen, my longtime co-worker, and one of the few people who actually saw me, glanced over from the mirror. "Still thinking about Brandon?" she asked, blunt as always. I nodded. "He's basically disappeared." Ellie cries because he won't even call. And me? I don't even know what I believe anymore. Gwen walked over and rested a hand on my shoulder. "Lillian, if this was really just about caregiving, there are 100 ways he could handle that. Without ghosting his own wife and daughter. A good son doesn't have to vanish to prove he cares." I didn't say anything, but my silence was enough. She wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "Have you ever thought about just going there? No text, no warning, just show up." The idea punched a hole straight through my chest, but behind the panic was something sharper, something I hadn't felt in weeks: clarity. That night, while Ellie sat cross-legged on the floor colouring purple stars onto a cardboard box, I opened my laptop and searched up Sylvia's address. Asheville. Not far. Just under 4 hours from Raleigh. I scribbled it down on a sticky note, looked over at Ellie. She glanced up, wide-eyed. "Mom, are we going somewhere this weekend?" I smiled, soft but steady. "Yeah, baby. We're going to see Daddy. But it's a surprise, okay? Don't tell him." She gasped, grinning, and ran off to grab her latest drawing. "I'm going to give this to Daddy so he won't forget us." My heart cracked right there. The next morning, I submitted a weekend leave request. Then I stopped by that little watch store Brandon used to window shop at, but never bought anything from. I picked out the exact model he'd mentioned once and had it gift wrapped. Then I swung by the local market for cinnamon cookies and jasmine tea, Sylvia's favourites. From the outside, it probably looked like I was planning a wholesome family visit. But inside, this wasn't a reunion. This was an ambush for the truth. We hit the road at exactly 8 a.m. That Sunday, Ellie sat in the back seat, snuggled up with her teddy bear, humming to whatever was playing on the radio. I kept my eyes on the endless stretch of road, pine trees swaying on both sides, their edges just beginning to turn yellow. And about 30 minutes outside Asheville, I gripped the wheel a little tighter. Something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be just a surprise. This was going to be a reveal. I slowed the car down, nodding and smiling as Ellie chatted from the back seat about her school art project and how she'd gotten glitter on her math homework. Her voice was bright, but my head was somewhere else entirely, looping the same anxious thoughts over and over. Where was Brandon, really? Was he truly helping his mother like he claimed, or was something else going on? By noon, we were pulling into Sylvia's neighborhood. Everything was quiet, calm, picture perfect. White picket fences, immaculate lawns, a few American flags flapping lazily in the breeze. And I noticed it immediately. This place didn't look anything like it did the last time I'd been here. Back then, the yard was wild, unkept. The walkway was barely visible under overgrown weeds. But now, the lawn looked like it had just been cut. Bougainvillea burst with colour along the porch rails. There was even a pink kid's bike neatly parked under a tree, ribbons on the handlebars fluttering in the breeze. It wasn't Ellie's. We hadn't brought anything with us. I pulled over, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment. Ellie leaned forward, her eyes wide with excitement. "There's Grandma's house, Mom. Can we go in now?" I gripped the steering wheel and inhaled slowly before turning to her. "Just give me a second, baby. I want to look around first." I stepped out, pulling my coat tight. The air was cool and fresh, but my gut was anything but settled. From across the street, I saw someone come out of the house, a young woman with perfectly tied blonde hair, carrying a trash bag. She glanced toward my car, then turned and disappeared back inside, shutting the door without hesitation. A chill ran down my spine. I returned to the car, plastered on a smile, and turned to Ellie. "We're going to surprise Daddy, okay? But remember, it's a secret. We're not knocking yet." Ellie nodded eagerly, hugging her, drawing like it was sacred. "I'm ready." I wasn't. Not really. But I knew one thing for sure. This couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't keep living in the dark, whispering lies to my daughter and hoping they'd hold. The truth was waiting, and I had to face it. We walked together down the sidewalk, my hand wrapped around her tiny fingers. The sky over Asheville was clear, the breeze crisp, but inside me, a storm was gathering, loud and impossible to ignore. Just a few houses away from Sylvia's, a middle-aged woman walking a curly-haired dog crossed the street toward us. She squinted at me for a moment, then smiled with recognition. "Lillian, isn't it?" she said, tugging gently on the leash. "Oh my, it's been ages. And this must be Ellie." I froze for a second, then gave a tight smile. "Yes." "I'm Joyce," she continued, friendly and oblivious. "I live just across from Sylvia. We've been close for decades." She smiled down at Ellie, soft and warm. "She's gotten so big. I remember when she used to toddle around in that yard." I nodded politely, but my pulse kicked into overdrive. Something wasn't right. "I heard Sylvia had heart problems recently," I said, careful and measured. Joyce chuckled lightly, waving her hand. "Heart problems? Oh no, not Sylvia. Just last week she was out shopping with Brandon, and that blonde girl, what's her name again?" "Oh right, Lauren. They even brought a little boy with them. Sweetest thing. He kept calling Sylvia Grandma the whole time. I froze. My pulse stopped. Ellie looked up at me, her mouth parting just slightly, confused. But Kate. You said Brandon went to the store? I asked again, trying like hell to keep my voice even. Sure did, Joyce chuckled. He even helped me carry water bottles from the trunk. They looked so happy, like a real family. She smiled. It's good that Sylvia has grandkids around now. Keeps her spirits up. I nodded. I thanked her. I kept walking with Ellie. But each step felt like I was dragging a ton of bricks behind me. Now I got it. Now I understood everything. Why Brandon hadn't wanted me to visit. Why the texts had become so robotic. Why our daughter had been slowly, silently erased from his world. But I wasn't leaving without seeing it myself. A few minutes later, we turned the corner, and there it was. The house, cream-coloured, with a garden that looked like it had been lifted from a landscaping magazine. Lavender blue flowers lined the walkway, every blade of grass in place. And the front door? Cracked open, like a trap. My chest tightened. I looked down at Ellie. Stay close, baby, I whispered. We're not knocking yet. She nodded, clutching her little drawing, a purple cat with glitter eyes and a crooked tail, her gift for the dad she thought still missed her. I crept closer to the door, heart pounding in my throat. Laughter spilled out. Brandon's voice. Warm. Relaxed. Nothing like the tired texts he'd sent. No, Lauren. You're the one who poured too much oil in the pan. Then a woman's voice followed. Sweet and young. Teasing. I know. But your pancakes were amazing. I swallowed hard. Tate! Don't spill juice on the couch again. Sylvia's voice rang out, energetic and full of life. I just cleaned that yesterday. A child's laugh echoed back. Sorry, Grandma. I instinctively reached for Ellie, pulling her closer. Do you want to see Daddy? I whispered. She nodded silently, eyes wide. I lifted her up, just enough so she could peek through the crack in the door. Her face changed instantly. I leaned in too. The living room was flooded with sunlight. Brandon sat comfortably on the couch, his arm wrapped around a blonde woman in a sky blue dress. She leaned against him, smiling like she belonged there. On the rug, a little boy, maybe 5, pushed toy cars around, humming to a tune on the television. And then, Sylvia, not sick, not frail. She walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of cookies and orange juice, walking with confidence, standing straighter than I'd seen in years. I really love it here, Brandon, Lauren said, her voice soft. It's peaceful, cozy. It feels like home. And Brandon? He leaned in, kissed her forehead, and said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, because it is home. Brandon smiled, leaned down, and kissed Lauren's forehead like it was second nature. And you're my family, he said softly. Daddy, come play with cars, the little boy shouted, his voice full of joy. All right, Tate, I'm coming. Brandon laughed, getting up with ease. It felt like someone had taken a brick to my chest. Ellie clutched my arm so tightly it hurt. Mom, she whispered, voice shaking. That man, that's my dad, but he... I gently placed my hand over her mouth. Shh, not yet. Not now. My voice was low, rough, barely audible. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to stay still. We backed away from the front porch, pressing ourselves against the wall like shadows. My heart was racing, but not from panic, from rage, from heartbreak, from the need to stay clear-headed. I held Ellie close, tighter than ever, trying to shield her from what she'd just seen, from what she now knew. It wasn't just that Brandon had betrayed me, it was that our daughter, who still drew stick-figure families with 3 people holding hands, had just watched her father call another kid son. I closed my eyes, took a breath. Not because I was weak, but because I needed to lock in, focus. I needed clarity. I needed proof. I gently set Ellie down and knelt to her level. "Sweetie," I whispered, "I need you to wait right here for just a minute, okay? Mommy's got something important to do." She nodded, tear-streaked and sniffling, her fingers gripping the stuffed bear she'd carried all morning. I brushed her hair back, then stood and quietly moved toward the line of trees near the house. From behind the shrubs, I pulled out my phone. My hand trembled for half a second, just long enough for me to see my own reflection on the screen. I didn't look angry. I didn't look scared. I looked done. I switched the phone to video mode, held it steady, crept back toward the front door. Still open, still wide enough to see everything. Inside, the sound of laughter filled the space like nothing was wrong, like there wasn't a woman and child standing just beyond the frame of their fake little picture. I lifted the phone, angled it through the crack, and hit record. Lauren was curled up next to Brandon on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder, completely at ease. The little boy, Tate, ran circles around the coffee table, giggling and crashing his toy car into the legs. And Sylvia, the woman I had been told was weak, bedridden, barely hanging on. She walked in from the kitchen, glowing with energy, a tray of cookies and orange juice in her hands, her voice full of warmth as she set them on the table. A scene from a happy home, only it wasn't ours, and we didn't belong. "Brandon, I'm so glad you finally did the right thing," Sylvia said, her voice smug and satisfied. "Lauren's the one you should have chosen from the beginning. That Lillian girl. I told you, didn't I?" Over and over. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles went white. Every word was being captured, loud, clear, and damning. Brandon let out a chuckle. "Mom, let's not bring up the past. Everything's basically taken care of now." "Basically?" Lauren tilted her heel. "You sure?" "I still worry. What if she finds out?" Brandon's voice shifted. Cool. Confident. Too confident. "No way," he said. "Lillian believes anything I tell her. All I have to say is, Mom's really sick, and she buys it. She's never questioned me once." I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood, just to keep from gasping, just to stay still, just to not scream. Lauren's next question came sharp. "Bouquet, what about Ellie? She's still your daughter, right?" Brandon shrugged and grabbed a cookie, like they were talking about the weather. "Lillian'll handle her. I feel bad about Ellie. I do. But honestly, Tate needs me more. He's part of this life now. That little girl, she just isn't important anymore." Laura nodded, almost like she agreed. Then Brandon leaned back, exhaled, and said it without a flicker of shame. "I've got a new family now, Lauren. Ellie, she'll adjust." I stopped recording. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From fire, from a fury I had never felt before, from a line crossed so deeply, there was no going back. Brandon hadn't just cheated. He hadn't just lied. He had thrown our daughter, the little girl he used to read bedtime stories to, who used to fall asleep in his arms, into the trash like she was some forgotten remnant from another life. I turned and hurried back to the bushes, where Ellie sat curled up on the grass, her knees pulled to her chest, her drawing limp in her lap. Her eyes were swollen, face stained with quiet tears. "Mom," she whispered, between shaky breaths, "why did Daddy call that boy his son? What about me?" I knelt down and pulled her into my arms. "Daddy did something wrong, baby. But you didn't. You didn't do anything wrong." I stroked her hair, kissed her forehead, wiped her cheeks. "You are the most important thing in my life, Ellie. Nothing, not a lie, not a person, not anything, is going to change that." She sniffled and nodded, her grip tightening on my shirt. I picked her up and carried her back to the car, holding her like the world might break apart if I didn't. And in my mind, a plan had already formed. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about getting even. This was about justice, about making sure no one ever erased us with a lie again. I had the video, I had the truth, and Brandon was about to find out exactly what that meant. I started the car, but I didn't drive. Not yet. I stared at the screen, hands steady, heart pounding. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled until my fingers stopped on a name I never thought I'd actually need. Joanna Pierce. I'd met her once, years ago, during a dispute at the hospital. She was sharp, no nonsense, fair, but deadly in a courtroom. I hit call. 3 rings. "Hello?" "Joanna, it's me, Lillian Moore. I need to see you, as soon as possible." My voice didn't shake this time. I have proof, and I'm ready to fight. We hung up. I looked into the rearview mirror. Ellie was hugging her stuffed bear, her eyes distant, lost. That was it. No more waiting. No more hoping. I wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. I was a mother, and I would not let anyone erase my daughter like she was nothing. We left Asheville that same afternoon. But not before I backed up the video, twice. One copy to the cloud, another to a hard drive tucked inside my purse. I wasn't losing this proof. Not to a glitch, not to chance. Ellie fell asleep on the way home, curled up in the back seat, Bear still in her arms. Her face looked soft again, innocent, like she hadn't just had her world shattered. But mine was steel now. There were no more tears left. Just resolve. As soon as we got back to Raleigh, I made one more call, this time to Rachel Winwood, a family and custody lawyer Gwen had worked with before. I never thought I'd need someone like her, but today, it wasn't optional. Rachel booked me in for a morning slot, no delay. That night, I texted my mom, Elaine Moore, still living in Durham, less than an hour away. "Mom, I need to drop Ellie with you for a few days. I'll explain when I get there." The next morning, before the sun even came up, I woke Ellie gently. She didn't ask many questions, just nodded quietly as we got in the car. When we arrived, my mom opened the door before I even knocked. The worry on her face said everything. "What's going on, sweetheart?" I took a deep breath, hugged Ellie close, and whispered, "I'll tell you everything soon, but right now, I need you to take care of her for a few days." She nodded, scooped Ellie into her arms, and whispered something into her ear. I just stood there, holding the folder with the prenup, the hotel receipts, the video, the truth. It wasn't even 8 a.m. yet when I walked into Rachel's office, a small red brick building tucked into a quiet street downtown. Rachel greeted me with a firm handshake, those sharp, steady eyes, reading me like a case file already halfway won. She led me into a private meeting room. I placed the phone on the table and said, "I want a divorce, and I want full custody of my daughter." Rachel didn't say anything right away. She watched the video, every second, didn't blink, didn't interrupt. When it ended, she calmly paused the screen, looked up, and said, "You've got everything I need. Visuals, audio, dates. This isn't just infidelity. This is concealment, deception, moral misconduct. The court will side with you." I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. He said Ellie didn't matter. Rachel reached for her phone and called her assistant. "Draft an emergency petition for divorce? Irreconcilable differences," she said. "Request full custody. Attach the video." The fight had officially begun, and I was ready. I nodded, watching her, knowing without a doubt I had picked the right woman for this war. Just as I was about to leave her office, she gave me one final instruction. "Before we officially file, I need you to check your joint bank account." That afternoon, I walked into the bank, logged in, and there it was, plain as day. Brandon was still using the card, still spending our shared money, still buying things for Lauren, and for her kid. I didn't hesitate. I withdrew half the funds, transferred every cent into a new account, one with only my name and Ellie's. Then I shut down all outside access, changed passwords, activated alerts, locked everything down. That night, back at my mother's house, we had dinner together, just the three of us. Ellie laughed a little. My mom watched me quietly for a while, then finally asked, "So, you've made your decision?" I nodded. "Not just for me," I said. "For Ellie. I won't let her grow up thinking it's normal to be thrown away, like she's disposable." My mum didn't say anything after that. She just squeezed my hand, and it was enough. That night, I lay next to Ellie in bed, listening to her slow, peaceful breathing, and felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. I wasn't scared of Brandon anymore. Not his lies. Not his gaslighting. Not the carefully curated little family fantasy he was building in Asheville. I had already lost enough. Now it was time to take back what was mine. With truth, with law, with the unshakable clarity of a mother who refuses to disappear. A few days later, I found myself standing outside the white gate of Sylvia's house, the one I used to associate with comfort, with trust. Now, it was where every last illusion was about to die. Rachel Linwood stood next to me in a sharp charcoal suit, her posture straight, her expression cold and clear. In her hands was a thick folder, stamped, signed, and ready. Divorce papers, the custody petition, financial records, and the video, the one that captured every word of betrayal. She looked at me, voice steady. "Ready?" I took a breath, nodded, more than ever. We walked up the stone path, bougainvillea still blooming brightly over the porch, like a slap in the face. Rachel rang the bell. Seconds later, Brandon opened the door. His face went pale. "Lillian? What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't flinch, didn't blink. "I came to finish what you started." "Oh." He glanced at Rachel, his mouth tightening. "Who's this?" "She's Rachel Linwood," I said before he could open his mouth. "My attorney." Brandon's face fell. "Now's not a good time. Lauren and Tate are napping. My mom too." "Then wake them," Rachel cut in, cool as ice. "Because your fantasy, it's about to implode." Before he could stop me, I stepped right into the house. Everything looked exactly as it had from behind that cracked door. Tidy, cozy, complete. Except there was no room for my daughter in it. Lauren walked out of the kitchen, holding a coffee mug. She saw me, froze, and then looked straight at Brandon, panic in her eyes. "What is she doing here?" she hissed, setting the mug down too fast. I didn't answer. Rachel opened the folder and calmly began laying documents on the table. "We're here to serve divorce papers," she said, "supported by full evidence of deception, concealment, and repeated betrayal. This," she tapped one of the forms, "is the petition for full parental rights." Rachel pulled out a small USB drive and placed it firmly on the table. "And this," she said, "is the video footage of exactly what went down in this house 3 days ago." Brandon's face was drained of color. Before he could stammer out a word, Sylvia appeared in the hallway, still clutching her phone. "What's going on?" she snapped. "Why are you here, Lillian?" I turned slowly to face her, the woman who once called me a blessing to the family, who stood by and watched everything fall apart, without lifting a finger. "You look good," I said coldly, not exactly the image of someone too ill for visitors. Sylvia's mouth tightened. "I don't owe you any explanation." "No," I replied, "because everything's already been recorded." That's when Lauren snapped. Her voice rose, cutting through the room. "You told me she didn't know anything. You said it was done. You said I was your family now." "Lauren," Brandon hissed, trying to hush her. "Now's not the time." "She just dropped a nuclear bomb in the middle of your perfect little fantasy," Lauren shouted. Then she turned to me, eyes narrow and full of heat. "You think you can just waltz in here and steal him back with a stack of legal documents?" I didn't flinch. "I don't want a man who betrays his own child," I said calmly. "I came here to protect my daughter, the same daughter he said doesn't matter anymore." Brandon visibly recoiled. "Lillian, I didn't mean it like that." Rachel didn't even glance at him. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and let the audio play out loud, for the whole room to hear. Brandon's voice echoed crystal clear. "Tate needs me more. I've got a new family now, Lauren. Ellie, she'll have to get used to it." Silence fell, like a guillotine. Brandon took a step back, eyes wide, completely speechless. I inhaled deeply. "I didn't come here to beg," I said. "I came to say, Ellie and I, we don't need you. Not anymore." Sylvia's voice cracked through the tension. "Get out of my house!" Rachel turned to her, calm and composed. "Legally? This house isn't solely yours until asset division is finalized. And considering your son's still using joint marital funds for questionable expenses, the court will be very interested in that." Brandon collapsed into a chair, face in his hands. Lauren spun on her heel and stormed up the stairs, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. I didn't say another word. Didn't need to. I turned around and walked out of that house, back straight, steps steady. The sky over Asheville was grey, but inside me, there was light again. 3 months later, on a crisp April morning, I stood by the window of my new apartment in downtown Raleigh. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, but it was mine. My name was on the lease. I'd picked out every pillow, every lamp, every plant on the windowsill. The place still smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender cleaner. Ellie ran around the living room, holding a paper flower crown she made for her 7.5 birthday party. "I can't wait until the afternoon, Mom," she shouted, breathless with excitement. Joy welled up quietly in my chest as I adjusted the little chalkboard sign by the kitchen. "Happy birthday, Ellie." The divorce had gone through quickly. Rachel had crushed it. I was granted full custody, half the assets, and health coverage for both of us. Not long after, the hospital promoted me, lead shift coordinator in the ER, a position I once thought I'd never reach, while living in the shadow of a man who liked to dim my light. Mom moved in for the first few months, helping however she could, as strict as ever. But she cooked, cleaned, and read Ellie bedtime stories, like she was trying to make up for all the calls that never came. Just a simple cake baked by Gwen, mint green balloons, and the loud, joyful chaos of neighborhood kids running wild. Ellie wore a light blue dress I'd found at a local handmade shop. The second the birthday song ended, she ran up to me, eyes glowing. "Mom, this is the best birthday ever." I pulled her into a tight hug. "Because you deserve every bit of joy, baby." Elaine was slicing cake, Gwen was pouring juice, and I just stood there for a moment, letting it all soak in. It finally felt like life was right. Then, something in the corner of my eye caught my attention. Across the street, parked just beyond the fence, was a familiar car. And standing beside it, hands in his pockets, was Brandon. He didn't come in, didn't move, just stood there, watching Ellie from a distance. I didn't call out to her, didn't wave him over. I only looked at him once. Just long enough for him to know, to see, crystal clear, that Ellie and I no longer belonged to the world he had tried to rewrite without us. A few minutes later, the car pulled away. No one else noticed. But for me, that was it. My closure wasn't just legal anymore. It was emotional. Complete. Ellie hugged her teddy bear tightly as she leaned in and whispered to me, after blowing out her candles, "Mum, I don't remember my birthday last year, but I'll remember this one forever." My throat clenched. Because this year, she got to be her full self. And so did I. A few months after I was officially granted full custody of Ellie, I heard something through the grapevine. Not from Brandon, of course, but through an old friend, someone who used to work with him in insurance. Apparently, Brandon had quit. Truth? He was fired. The company found out he'd been using his corporate card for personal crap, weekend getaways with Lauren and her son, fancy dinners, hotel stays. The fallout? A ruined credit score and an internal lawsuit that dragged on for over 6 months. I wasn't shocked, just disappointed. The man I had once trusted, once built a life around, had chosen ego over everything, and it cost him more than just a marriage. Lauren, she didn't stick around either. A few months after our showdown in Asheville, she packed up and left the house with Tate and didn't leave a single note behind. Rumor had it, she found out Brandon had been texting some young co-worker behind her back. Same old story, same old Brandon. And I was finally free of all of it. One afternoon, out of nowhere, Lauren called me. Just to clarify a few things, she said. The conversation lasted barely 3 minutes, but by the time we hung up, both of us understood, crystal clear, the truth. The only person who had truly lost everything was Brandon. As for Sylvia, winter hit hard. She suffered a stroke and was admitted to a long-term care facility down in southern Charlotte. With Brandon jobless and broke, her insurance lapsed. The bills started piling up. And now, that burden sat squarely on the shoulders of a man with no income, no family at his side, and no one left who gave a damn. I didn't feel happy when I heard it, but I didn't feel guilty either. Every choice has a price, and Brandon made the wrong one over and over again. One warm afternoon in June, Ellie and I went to a local fair with Gwen. We were crouched at a little vendor booth, Ellie carefully picking out a beaded bracelet, when I felt it, that weird pressure, like someone was staring. I looked up. Brandon, standing maybe 30 feet away, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. He looked thinner, smaller. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, silent, still. Ellie didn't see him. She was too busy choosing between a pink kite and a butterfly one. I didn't call her over. I didn't wave at him either. I just looked at him, long enough for him to see that this life, the one he threw away, was moving on without him. Brandon looked at Ellie, his eyes hollow, and at that moment, I knew I didn't regret what I saw. It was grief, the kind you feel when you finally realize you've lost the only thing that ever really mattered. I didn't walk toward him, didn't storm away either. I just reached over, gave Gwen's hand a light squeeze, and we walked off together, leaving behind a man who used to have everything, now invisible to everyone but me. That evening, Ellie sat at the table, legs swinging as she colored. She looked up at me and asked, "Mom, can we go to the park tomorrow?" I smiled and nodded. Of course. But first, we're stopping by the new bakery, the one with the cinnamon rolls you love. Her eyes lit up. Then don't forget the orange juice, okay? I walked over, wrapped my arms around her, and kissed her forehead. If you wanted the whole world, baby, I'd bring it. Because we didn't need apologies. We didn't need the family he faked. We had something real, and that was more than enough.